Well, hello, good morning, and welcome to the AusCycling Esports Tour. We are here for stage 2 after starting last night in Bologna. I'm Kate Bates, joined by Kieran Lewis. And Kieran, a time trial like that in Bologna, a pretty hard way to start the tour, but some great results.
Yeah, it was certainly a bit of a rude way to kick off the tour, but we all love a good prologue to see things out. And yeah, saw some really impressive times out there as well. I think Tony Doherty taking everything by surprise in the men, that was an absolutely amazing effort by him.
Yeah, there were certainly some pretty big performances. Let's talk about what we've got in store today. They are headed to the hills. So as we said last night, Bologna today, we've got Muir and the mountain. One lap, so 34 kilometres of the lap, but they do have a bit of a lead in as well to beef that up. That distance in total to 39 kilometres. Kieran, there's no two ways about it. This is a really tough course. And if you are not climb inclined, it's going to be a pretty tough day.
Yeah, this is certainly one for the climbers. We're starting in Titans Grove, and then we take in the desert flats en route to the Epic Colm. As you can see there, climbing its way up. We also have to tackle Radio Tower in all its glory. I mean, just done 9.5K at 4%, and then suddenly you're into what is about a K and a half at about 14, 15%. It is a really brutal climb. And that's all before the final, which, as you see, as we're leaping our way down, heads back into Titans Grove to take up the reverse KOM. Sort of the two main pinch points of today. So I think what we're going to see is the bunch really being sorted out up the Epic Colm and Radio Tower, and then whoever is left with the best legs is going to take out that final sprint up that reverse KOM.
Yeah, I've certainly never seen anybody racing up the Radio Tower. I've ridden up a few times myself, maybe muttering some expletives under my breath. It is certainly quite a challenge for them. 915 metres of vertical climbing. So that will keep them on their toes. From a tactical perspective, it almost sorts it out. From the get-go, I don't see, Kieran, that there'll be too much of a need for super aggressive riding styles for the most part. I think the course will naturally self-select. But let's take a look at what happened last night. We've got the top 5 in results for you there. And Kieran, take us through the standings so far.
Yeah, I think what we saw last night was a little bit of a surprise just across there on the men with Tony Doherty taking things out. No discredit to him, but no noted major results. He's not really a noted Zwifter of sorts in the esport realm against our top talent, but he certainly put out an amazing ride, averaging 400 watts there, 6.1 watts per kilogram for him to take things out over John Story. Got a little inside tip here off our Kiwi producer that John Story is actually a dual Olympian for the Kiwi rowing team. So he certainly comes well regarded, I would say, when it comes to endurance sports. So no mean feat to topple him in the standings there. Trent Stevenson, Tim Dervine, and William O'Bray taking things out. So yeah, I think a bit of a surprise top 5 there. Alex Bogner did start the line. Recently announced ZA finalist Alex Bogner, might we add. But unfortunately, he didn't manage to make it into the top 5. We'll see if he's lining up today. This could be one that suits him in that final. And then across in the women's there as well, we had Angela Mccray taking things out. Now, I'd say Angela wasn't one I had highlighted. We had Katie Bandry potentially on the start list, but it seems she didn't take the start line. But Angela in her own right, don't discredit her. She's a top-level esport racer. I was just taking a little poke through her Zwift Power profile, and it seems she actually races for the Evo squad in two different time zones across in the Americas East and also the APAC region, both for the mixed division, which means she's also mixing up with the men in that squad out there in the B category. So she certainly comes with a huge amount of talent behind her legs. Inghammer taking out second place there, Megan Gammy in third with Birdie Num Num. That was Matthew's favourite name last night, and Jen Allen taking up fifth there.
Yeah, I mean, that's a funny thing, isn't it? You can actually put whatever name in there you want, hence Birdie Num Num. It is a funny one. The racing has started, so we will jump down to the pictures and see what is going on there. Now, of course, it's 34 kilometres for the lap, 39 kilometres, including the run-in through from the desert pens where they set out from. This isn't a huge group, but it is a high-quality group, I would say. We've got Ben Hill out there, and of course his brother Sam was also announced as one of the Zwift Academy finalists last night. Kieran, so we've got a bit of talent from Australia shining through there.
Yeah, it's actually really cool to see Ben lining up. Obviously, maybe taking turns there with Beck on daddy duties and mother duties there. Obviously, with the newborn they got down there in Canberra. So no, it's cool to see him out here. I'm going to immediately give him the commentator's curse and say he'll win today for sure. I've seen him Swift racing a lot recently in the ZRL, and he has been on fire. You're going to take some really good legs to topple him today, but let's see what we can see from the rest of the field. I see Callum Pearce out there. He was one that rode quite well early on in the time trial yesterday. I think he faded towards the end, and let's not discredit Tony Doherty. I saw his name just floating around in there as well. So he's out here to defend that lead. He's got that early start. Obviously, Ben starting on the back foot here. He had to take on the dad duties yesterday. He didn't get to do the time trial. So let's see if he can make up that ground. I wouldn't discredit him either. I think he might have the legs to do so today.
The commentator's curse. I did it in the ZRL this week. Kieran, I cursed both the women and the men, and it became quite a funny thing. I was told not to put forward any suggestions anymore. So I won't quite do that. I'll leave that up to you. But overall, we've got a tour points table. So that is what they are racing for here. Now we've got a bit of action, a move off the front here. Gill from Team On Form. See, now this will prove me wrong for saying that I thought it might be nice and quiet until the mountain, Kieran. But Gill is on the march, and might I just throw a little compliment his way for his choice of avatar facial hair. That's quite impressive.
Yeah. He is rocking the full beard, that's for sure. Obviously in Zwift you can create the avatar that you want to be, maybe not the avatar you really are, which is one of the funner parts of Zwift. You can rock your personality per se, we should say. But yeah, no, he's definitely an early move here in the first 2.5K. I mean, this is a long and hard day. He's maybe either not backing his own legs or pulling a team move, or maybe he's really backing his legs and going to go long the whole day. But he's not backing off here. He's still sitting strong, 5.5, 5.2 watts per kilogram. He's not laying off the pedals, but that pack is very alert to it. They're breathing down his neck as we speak. I see Ben Hill lurking around the front, Tim Doherty as well. Everybody, all the names there. They're definitely attentive to this one. They don't really want to let Gill off the front here, regardless of if it's a team move or not.
No. Fred Gill will be reeled back in. He's just got 1 second, and he has started backing off the power a bit. He then keeps applying it a little bit more, but to no real avail. We'll duck over and take a look at the women. We've got a bit of a reduced field today, but we've got Mccray out there again, Gammy and Hammer, who we all saw in action last night. And as you mentioned, Kieran, Ange Mccray, she's super tenacious. She races across a number of leagues, and she's just been getting better and better. When she first popped up in the WTRL Zwift Racing Leagues at the midway point of last year, she was certainly learning her racecraft, and that has accelerated quite significantly throughout the year. So she's been great to watch develop.
No, it's awesome seeing her back out here as well. As I mentioned, I was taking a poke through her Zwift power profile, and one thing I didn't mention was it sounds like Ange actually had a bit of an accident out in the IRL, and it's meant that she can only realistically ride indoors now, and it seems that she's really taken that by the scruff of the neck, and doesn't want to lose that competitive edge that I'm sure she has used to have out in the real world, and has converted it now. I mean, she's got a slew of gold trophies next to her name on Zwift Power, so that tells me this is a rider that does love racing on Zwift, that's for sure. And I imagine you yourself, Kate, has come across Ange a few times in the ZRL, judging off the amount of times that she does race in the ZRL team for obviously her pink colours there, Evo. So no, it's definitely awesome to see her applying a trade. But also no discredit to Inghammer and Gammy lighting up today. That's awesome. That's our top three right there from yesterday. So we're going to see things sorted out today, that's for sure.
Yeah, we sure are. Now we will jump back to see what's happening over with the men's racing. Fred Gill Gee, he's eaten a big breakfast and had a very strong coffee this morning. Look at him go. We said 1 second he'll come right back. It almost feels, Kieran, like they're playing with him a little bit at this point, because 3 seconds is a little bit of a tough gap to maintain. But he is pushing on, and his average watts for the race are 5 watts per kg, which is more than a full watt and a half above any other rider out there. So he's certainly giving it a go. But again, they're coming back to this 1 second mark. You can see the avatar actually sitting up a little bit as he eases off. But again, that power keeps spiking. Like, he's really not prepared to just sit up and let them swallow him back into the pack, is he?
No, this looks like a rider that's very keen to get the legs going early, but he's being swallowed up by the pack there with Ben Hill now surging through to the front at 6.8, 6.7 watts per kilogram. I think Ben, his own self, doesn't want to waste any time here today. I would have expected Ben to wait for the epic KOM, but this might be just a case of lead from the front, set the pace that you feel like riding this climb, not exactly attack, as everybody sort of latches onto the back of the wheel there, moseys on up and takes the back of that Tron bike. It is interesting to note there, the bike selections today. Obviously, Zwift has many, many options out there of, different bikes, different wheels that you may want to select. And it seems like the Tron bike, which is a bike that you need to climb 50,000 meters of vertical gain in-game to unlock. So, i.e. someone that Zwifts an awful lot will only unlock this bike. But we can see that tends to be the bike of choice today. Quite a varying terrain, a lot of climbing. So we might see a few climbing builds out there as well. We'll keep an eye on that. But we've got another rider surging on the front here, Freeberg from America, riding for the Fred AF team, surging through to the front. Maybe just want some KOM points.
I haven't actually ascertained what the AF in the Fred team is. We could probably have a guess, Kieran. I'm not sure that it is correct, though, if I have my guess, to be honest. But they're a very prominent team in the ZRL as well. So it's really great to see people doubling up kind of in their racing schedule. I think it kind of gets under your skin, and we are seeing people aren't just sticking to one race a week, but certainly a lot more. It's a shame Mark O'Brien's not out there, because every time I've watched him race recently, he has absolutely animated the race from the very get-go to the very final metres. He only got caught with 50 metres to go this week. Now, this is an interesting one, Kieran. Look at this. Doherty is having to fight back on and bridge that gap. He got distanced across that little climb. Now, was that a positioning error, or do we think he's perhaps carrying a bit of fatigue in the legs after last night?
I'm going to guess maybe a bit of a user error on that front. Although his heart rate is awfully high, I'm guessing that's just because he's having to push very, very hard right now. 450 watts to close this gap down with the riders around him. But as I mentioned, Tim isn't a noted Zwifter per se. I think he did race in the NRS series for the Velo Oz Esports team there for obviously the virtual NRS that was ran early this year. But not a noted Zwifter in many of the other community races that are on throughout the year. Certainly haven't seen him line up in the ZRL just yet. So he's maybe has a little bit to learn about the pack dynamics, the way Zwift works. Once you let that wheel go, you've got to jump. Otherwise, it's lights out. Say goodnight.
Yeah. Now he's managed to get back to the group, so he will be able to get a bit of recovery. But as you pointed out, very high heart rate. It has been a big effort for him to do that. Now, I'm just seeing the comments. Haven't seen Juricic since he kicked my butt on Tuesday. That was a little bit of a reference to the ZRL, and Juricic is a very good sprinter. And we saw that they're having a little bit of a giggle out there. I like that, Kieran. They're like, it's serious racing, but there's also a fair bit of camaraderie amongst the guys as well, which I think is fantastic. I'm not sure how much they'll be chatting once they start climbing in earnest, to be honest, but let's see how they're feeling there.
Yeah, as we take a look here at a chasing pack now, obviously they've been distanced up that earlier KOM, but it's a big group here. If they potentially work together and the riders ahead start to ease off the pedals, it's only 6-7 seconds. I wouldn't say this is done days just yet. I see one Aero jersey in there as well, so he'll be very motivated to get up there to help Ben out as well. But A couple of little big names in there. I see Windsor from the Bathurst Cycling Club there. He rode quite well yesterday. I think he got sixth, actually, looking at the results sheet. So, bit of a surprise there, as well as Callum Pearce. I obviously already gave him the commentator's curse early, and he's found himself off the back here. But yeah, let's keep a note on that. Let's see if they can drag their way back. It looks like they actually are. They've got that time gap down to 5 seconds now. They're putting in the work, but unfortunately, the one thing here is that they're burning Vickies a little bit early. They're having to ride a bit harder than they really would want to. And all of this on the way into the hardest part of the course, that's not going to feel too good once the road starts to go upwards in earnest.
No, spot on. And you can notice as they're chasing back that it was a nice group working together. It very quickly becomes every man for himself as they try and just desperately jump across before it does tick up too much. Now, that aero jersey that was in that chasing pack is Nate Chalmers. He's in the aero juniors, so great to see him out there and racing as well. But we're just seeing these little gaps open at the back, and it is a bit like an elastic band at this point in the course. Kieran, a small gap opens up, and all of a sudden you find yourself having to put down massive watts just to bridge that gap. That fatigue really adds up.
Yeah, that's for sure. And I think one thing to note, it obviously is a smaller field, and I think that not per se is necessarily a bad thing to the racing style. I myself, I obviously race on Zwift quite a little bit, and I actually quite like the races that have like 30 or less riders in it. It becomes very tactical all of a sudden, that it's not all about just mashing out the highest watts in the group pack. It's now suddenly you could get up at the road at an opportunist point, but that might not work out for you if you don't really have the legs. Riders can come from behind all of a sudden if they get together. It opens itself up to however the riders decide to race it. And that's what we're seeing right here through these rollers in Titans Grove right now. We're seeing, riders let wheels go, maybe some team plays there with obviously Aeros out here. I see a couple Z Sun riders even as an Ink rider in there. Maybe even a few of the IRL clubs as well. Obviously there's some Aussie clubs still taking part of this. They've rolled together after the club challenge during the weekday that just wrapped up last week. And maybe they want to put some final touches on ahead of the IRL season, actually finally getting the kickoff down under.
Now, let's just take a look at the profile here to get a bit of an understanding of what is ahead of them. They are 9.5 kilometres into that lap. They're not too far away from starting the climb in earnest. Now, the climb is a bit, let's call it manageable for a non-climber, and that might sound a little bit funny, Kieran, but it is of a kind of grade that if you get into a rhythm, it's not too bad. That all changes. We can see the spike at the top at the radio tower. You have to have a few matches left in the box to get up there. What you said about the smaller group and the tactics and not all the power, I absolutely agree with you. And hasn't it been interesting over the years watching people develop their real Zwift strategy and learning how to race and having a little bit of fun experimenting with how to do that, how to attack in Zwift is very different to IRL. I think a lot of the base principles are the same, Kieran, but we're seeing some pretty funky strategies playing out and some really impressive rides.
Yeah, 100%. The name of the game always remains the same, right? Ride as conservative as you can until it's time to show your cards. And taking a look right here at Ben Hill from Aero, you can see his numbers on the screen. He's riding as conservative as he can. That 120 heart rate that we saw, even dip down to 118 whilst I was watching him there. He's feeling good. He's obviously got some sort of form about him right now. He's obviously in shape, so low heart rate at this point in the race after a quick and hefty start. He himself had a little dig up the KOM. I think he's got some good legs, that's for sure. And I've just swung left there, and we saw in that profile that's when the road starts to tick uphill. I think we're going to see maybe a little bit of action. Anyone not feeling particularly strong might hit it early here. Not to give anyone that races me any secrets of how I race, but that's how I race. If I'm not feeling good, I lead from the front because, hey, that's how racing works, right? You think that person leading is obviously feeling really strong. And it's a little, secret of the trade. But, we're seeing Ben Hill here deploy that tactic, and I imagine it's for the opposite reason. He's feeling awfully good, and he wants to dictate the pace and maybe weed some riders out early. We see Juric coming through as well. Obviously, you noted one of the ZRL races out here. He's obviously feeling awfully good as well, leading from the front, following through with Ben Hill. But we've immediately seen a reaction from the pack, and it's halving, and riders are dropping off awfully quickly. We've got someone already dropping an aero power up. I think that was Axe Windsor there from the Bathurst Cycling Club. He's obviously not feeling so good and doing everything he can. If you're not too familiar with this climb, Epic KOM, as Kate noted, it's not a climber's climb per se. However, the very start of it is. It's as you can see there up in the top right hand, we've got 8%, 10% even gradients here. It's very hard right at the start, but as long as you suffer through that, it immediately eases off. You go over the bridge in just a second, we're going to round the corner and we'll see it. And then we're back to a 2-3%. So that's immediately you start to get back into that drafting effect. So you can see Ben's trying to take advantage of that steep gradient off the bat, see what he can shake out before he reaches right at the top. And I'm sure we're going to see some fireworks up that radio column.
Now, Ben's got really consistent powers up here. He's been just sitting at that same kind of 6.2, 6.3, just over that 400 watt mark fairly consistently. Now, this is where they hit the bridge. It does taper off a lot already, 3%. It gets down to about 2%. This is a good chance for everybody to regain a little bit of placement in that bunch if they have dropped the wheel, but it's also already very tough. The heart rates are very high, and a lot of the riders at this point will be feeling a little bit intimidated about the climb to come, Kieran, because even if you manage to get back on and hang on at this point, you do know what is coming ahead. It's as much of a head game as it is a leg game.
Yeah, that's what they always say, right? 70% legs, 30% mental. And that 30%, it's actually maybe even bigger than that, because you can talk yourself out of good legs at the end of the day. And we're watching Tim climb his way back across the Ben's wheel there before we flick back over to the women and check in how they're faring on the course as they're just tackling the Epic KOM. We saw the men obviously just hitting the slopes. But they're still all together. 3 women that lined up today. We've got Ange Mccray leading things from the front here. She was our winner yesterday, and boy, what a performance from Angela yesterday that we saw. She was quite dominant, and obviously showing today she has the legs to do this.
I think Ange will just get into a rhythm and ride her own race up here, and Hammer and Gammy will have to find their own rhythm too. It is a long enough climb that if you do go over that red, it is very hard to come back from it. But Ange will have ridden this course a number of times. I'm not sure how often in a race capacity, but she's got a great bike setup. Kieran, she looks like she belongs on Bike Exchange with that setup.
Yeah, maybe a fan of the little Aussie team there. I think we're running that nice purple Scott. Deep dish wheels as well. She's obviously setting up here for a bit of varied terrain is what I'm getting. I know that the Scott actually rates itself not half bad in aero and climbing ability, but she's opted for the heavy deep dish wheels. So I'm guessing she's trying to suit herself up for any opportunity here. And looking at the way things are going, unless In can come across to the wheel, she's going to be riding to the end solo. But unfortunately, we've got Megan Gammy just losing the wheels there. But credit to her. It's a good ride. She's still going to see herself on the podium at the end of this. As long as she just, keeps on course. That's all she's got to do. Ride her own race, make it to the finish. Everyone out here isn't going to find it easy. Mirror on the Mountain is one of the hardest courses on Watopia, if I'm honest. Anything that goes up Radio Tower is always a horrible time in some ways, but hopefully rewarding because you get that chance to get the 100k an hour badge on the way back down. Let's take a
yeah,
back
whose idea was this? Let's take a look back at the men. Doherty seems to have found his legs. He has settled in at the front there. Ben Hill just behind. I'm interested in the bike that Doherty is riding. We'll have to check whether he has access to the Tron or not, Kieran. But what are your thoughts on the advantage or disadvantage these bikes may have at this point when they're going upwards?
Yeah, I mean, just Just for our users out there who maybe they're not too familiar with Zwift, your bike selection weighs a lot into your performance, as it does in the real world, right? So what we're seeing here is 3 Tron bike users, which is a great bike for varied terrain. We're seeing Jurich just surge off the front here. We'll watch how they react. But back to the bike selections, yeah. So the Tron obviously being the favoured bike, and it is outright very, very fast. If you don't know what bike to use for a course, the age-old saying is just go off the Tron. Why not? It's always going to do you well. What I'm seeing from Doherty, obviously, he's a level 26 Zwifter. Ben Hill, I know, is a level 50 Zwifter. He has been on the platform forever. I've raced him so many times on Zwift. So you've got 2 users at 2 ends of the spectrum. Now, I imagine Tim's taken up the Zwift last year. He was one of maybe the NRS adapters with the first round of the NRS. So he's got what I would call, by the looks of him, that Trekker with the lightweights on. So that's a bike that's set up for climbing. But Jurich surging off the front right now at 7 watts per kilogram. He's feeling good. You know, he's going early on this climb. He's gone before the radio tower. He doesn't want to wait around. He's obviously, as you mentioned, a rider that races in the ZRL. So he's come across Ben Hill before, that's for sure. And he knows Ben's bread and butter, getting over my words there, is going to be the radio tower. So he doesn't want to reach radio tower with Ben. And Tim will know that as well. But we're seeing a quick reaction from the pair of them there. But it looks like Stevenson not able to follow the wheels anymore there, riding for the Echuca Cycling Club, I believe.
Now, interesting move from Juricic. I mean, they were already commenting earlier on how he destroyed them the other day, and he's clearly on a bit of a mission. He's got his cool map backwards cap on. I love this. I think our producer Anna is not as big a fan of this. And, you know, I mean, let's just for a second talk about the fashion here, Kieran, because I know it's all serious racing. But there are some kind of cool, extra cool points for how they do compose their avatars. And may I say that Ben Hill, in this view, looks like a beetle. And I don't mean the animal, I mean the musician, doesn't he?
He's got those rock star glasses on in game. They actually call the rock star glasses with the sweatband, the long hair, and the big beard. He does look quite like a Beatle member. But no, the fashion choices on Zwift are an awfully big part. You know, it's all about expressing your personality through the meaning of your avatar. And yeah, the backwards map cap, you know, that's a new addition this year. It was something that actually the Oz office got into the game. We looked at the forwards running cap and went, what if we turn that around backwards? And here it is. So it's quite cool. And who else but to pair with that with then Map, obviously. It's a cool cycling Australian brand as well. I personally love it. I think it's pretty fun. It's something different, you know, it stands out from out, but I'm not too sure about Juricic's actual kit selection. I imagine that's the OMG team's official kit that they need to race in on ZRL. I'm not too sure I'm a fan of, you know, orange, blue, white, yellow. I don't know. I'm not too sure if they all go together. It's a lot of colours, that's for sure.
Well, look, Isaac Juricic, you're doing a great job, but perhaps work on especially those socks. They just fade right into that Tron, and I think socks are a very important element. Now, he's not establishing a giant gap here, and I'm not sure he's even trying to. He's just setting a rhythm. Doherty and Hill are also setting their own rhythms at this pace. They're only a second behind. On this view, it does look like they're nowhere to be seen, but if we keep our eye on that and pan back, thank you very much, producer, we can see that they are sitting just behind him. And you do need to get into your own rhythm up here. So when there is an attack, you need to consider very carefully whether you're going to use the energy to jump with them or whether you're going to reel them back bit by bit. But this front group certainly establishing. We've then got just one chaser back. He is on his own, and then a little group forming here with Mears and Zito. But
yeah, it's going to be
this is a hard section of the course, isn't it, Kieran?
Yeah, exactly right. I mean, this is that kind of, okay, where are we at? Take stock. These riders here, they're going to be best suited getting together. That's going to be the best power here. I mean, it's easier said than done, but what's going to happen, obviously, we go back into a ramp now. If you're looking at that course profile on the top right there, we go into a ramp now. It will ease off once more before we get to radio tower. But at the end of the day, those riders ahead, they're gone, but they're not gone, is the way I would say. You need at least a minute on a course like this on Zwift if you aren't feeling yourself. I've actually, unfortunately, been in that situation where I found myself feeling pretty good on Epic KOM, but not so good for the last 10K. And I can tell you very safely, if you don't have a minute 30, you're going to get caught and you're not going to have the legs to even stay in that group anymore. So it's not all said and done for these riders, but they do need to look after each other. It's going to be power in numbers here when it gets flat once more. But let's take another look at the women. They'll be about halfway up the Epic KOM here with Mccray surging ahead. She's having a ding-dong battle with Hammer there. Unfortunately, Hammer isn't the Hammer in this situation. Ange is, and she's really surging ahead at the moment.
I think you've just peaked in commentary with that line, Kieran. I absolutely love it. Mccray is looking strong and composed, as we did expect from her. Hammer is putting in a great ride. I'm noticing that she is just holding a very consistent power. In fact, above Ange, but that gap has opened up, and 2 seconds on this kind of climb can seem like an eternity. You're certainly not getting any draft back there. But sometimes it's good to still be able to go your own pace, even without that draft effect, to be able to see the person in front of you. Neither of them are getting any effect, or bonus or help from having anybody else around them. So it's not too bad a position for Hammer if she can just get into her own rhythm. But we can see, Kieran, that every 150 odd metres, another second gets added to that gap, and ever so slowly Mccray is really pulling away. In fact, as we say that, she's out of the seat and accelerating over 5 watts per kg. Hammer still back at the 3.5 mark, and this is where the gap's really starting to balloon.
Yeah, we just saw the two riders go different directions there. We saw Mccray go up and Hammer go down in her watts per kilogram there. So I think that it's not, I don't think fully lights out for Hammer just yet. Maybe she's being smart about it, riding within herself, yet to see. But Ange, looking at her power up in the top left there, 200 watts at 160. This isn't all out for her just yet, I'm willing to say. I think she's also riding within herself. She knows her abilities, and she's not a rookie on Zwift, that's for sure. She's, as we've already noted, she races quite regularly out here. So she's not, none of this is alien to her, is the best way to put it. She's actually level 50 in her own right, shoe. That means she's clocked a lot of time on this platform. I know that she would know Epic KOM inside and out. And Hammer in her own right, she's not either a rookie, but she might know that, Mccray's got her today and she wants to just keep that gap open over Gammy. She maybe wants to solidify second place because Megan has been riding her own race back there. She's been riding what she would know that she can get to the finish in. And if Hammer goes too hard, she's going to blow completely and Gammy will just ride straight past her and take that second place right off the back.
Exactly. Now, they've got about an hour and 10 minutes out on course in total based on their current projections. So they are only just approaching the halfway mark in terms of time on course. They do still need to really temper that effort for what is to come. Going down the other side, you mentioned, Kieran, it's your chance maybe to hit that 100k an hour. For some of the slighter riders, if they are solo, they may not be able to get the benefit of the draft and the momentum with a bunch to be able to do that. But there's certainly a big payback for this climbing, and that is that they do get to descend it on the other side. I think they'll be looking forward to that. Let's jump over and take a look at what's happening in the men. Juricic has now increased his lead, and he's on that wonderful part of the climb where they do get a little bit of reprieve. So we're seeing him just roll down and up. This can be quite nice on the legs, can't it, Kieran? Because it just gives you a moment to ease the pressure off, even for a couple of seconds before you have to get climbing again.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on the style of rider here and the style of climate that they are. I mean, myself, I hate disruptions when I climb. Very much, I like my one power. I'm a bit of a diesel in that way. If I'm changing my power, it's only to go up. That's it. I'm going to attack. So, but certain riders, and Juricic is quite young. I notice he's one of our junior riders out here. So I imagine he actually likes changes in pace. The younger you are, you tend to prefer different changes in pace because the heart rate will go up and down, and that's going to suit you. The older you are, you don't want your heart rate to change that much. That hurts. It hurts a lot, and I'm learning that pretty quickly. But he's built up a massive lead here. He's 17 seconds over Ben Hill, and you can see him only just lurking there in the background. But Ben and Tim, they're not too far apart. It looks like Ben has actually distanced Tim. I'm gonna again call it out, but they're gonna be best suited to ride together. I mean, this effort would have hurt Isaac. I'm noticing he's sitting on around 170 BPM, so he is in the red zone, that's for sure. But yeah, it's always that question of where you're at when you get to that descent. It's check stock time, and two riders versus one rider downhill. Logic always says, physics say that's going to be quicker. That aero hole will always be punched by someone in front of you. You go faster, you can pass each other, all that kind of wonderful stuff. So let's see what Ben decides to do. I think he's going to actually just push on. He knows radio tower's up ahead. He needs to get on terms, and that'll actually suit him, right? I mean, we know that Ben didn't race yesterday. He was on daddy duties, so no start line time for him. He needs that win over Tim. He needs to start to claw this gap back, and this will suit him riding with Isaac. So let's see if he can get on terms here. He's trying his best, but Isaac's not lying down. He's immediately ramped up to above 7 watts per kilogram. That's amazing, actually. That's huge numbers there. But Ben will ride his own race, very seasoned rider, that's for sure. He's been around for quite a while now on the scene, and he'll know what he's doing. He's certainly a well-noted long-range rider. Once we get into after about 30, 40 minutes race, things might come back to Ben, I would say.
They've got very similar 20-minute power profiles. Hill on slightly on the heavier side, so he will certainly be more suited once it does get to that. I actually think, now this is controversial, Kieran, but happy to be shot down in discussion in commentary. A rider like Ben Hill has so much power under his belt that when it gets quite steep, he actually thrives in the climbs. For him, I've noticed that these parts of the climbs tend to be a bit more of a slog for him. But once it gets steep, he is able to kind of put a bit more grunt into it and go up there. Now, Juricic is a junior. Sometimes we can notice in Zwift with the juniors that they're developing at such a pace that they almost don't even know what they're capable of. And sometimes, as you point out, the experience of Hill tactically, that can really come into play because they're not sure if they can back themselves. They're not quite sure where they're landing on that. I think that when you get a battle like this of the more experienced versus kind of the younger rider, it's always a really interesting race. So Juricic has gone over the top of the KOM, but let's not be fooled. They are about to head onto the radio tower, a small bit of reprieve here over the top. And then Kieran, they will turn left. And I'm going to throw it out there. I reckon Ben Hill is going to gain a little bit of momentum on the run into this radio tower and just chase Juricic like a greyhound chasing the rabbit on a course.
Yeah, I've just been watching closely the power over there on the right, and it looks like either A, Juricic is smart and wise here and he's waiting and conserving, or that actually took it out of him. That was a sub 19 minute, almost 18 flat climb up Epic KOM, and that hurts. That takes a lot out of the legs to climb that quick, as we see the catch happening right now. Let's watch how Isaac reacts. He's going to get on the wheel immediately, surging there. That elastic band effect happened right there. Ben actually timed that perfectly. That's a seasoned veteran move. But for Ben, he didn't have to do anything, right? He just stayed at what he's doing. No pace change for him. He just kept that momentum, kept on that 400 to 380 kind of watt range. He's now going to up it as we hit these very steep slopes. But the interesting thing to watch about Ben is his heart rate there. He's only been floating around that 170 to 176 kind of range. He's in that window, whereas Looking at Isaac over on Zwift Power, his heart rate has been going up and down, up and down, up and down. It's obviously lower right now than Ben, and I'm going to make maybe a controversial call, but I'm going to see that potentially skyrocket because the way he's riding, going up and down, what will happen is your heart rate will spike very quickly now. You've obviously gone through a period where things were quite easy, and suddenly you're going to go through a period where things are very hard. And your body isn't going to like that, at least from my take and how I ride. The second I go from easy to hard, I don't want that to happen. I'd much rather ride the way Ben is, that's for sure. But this, all things saying, at that stage right now, this actually suits Isaac the most. He's the rider that did race yesterday, and he has points. So this is suiting Isaac a lot. He's got some points over Tim right now. For Ben as well, he's scoring points back on the board. We might see him on the podium at the end of the day, potentially. We'll see where things shake up. But all in all, this definitely suits these two riders ahead. But Tim, looking back there at his watts, he's sitting on 5.7, 5.6 watts. His heart rate's at 180, and he's got those riders ahead as a carrot. The road's so steep here that it might be 24 seconds on the road, but that's how slow that this climb makes it be. We're at 12%, we're at 14, 15 kph, but that just slows things down. So you can see those riders immediately ahead of you, even if it is 25 seconds.
Now, Tony Doherty has a lot of grunt underneath him when he gets going, as we saw in the time trial last night. He is in a good position here because that gap could have opened up significantly more through this period. I think that if he can get to the top of the radio tower within about 40 seconds of Hill and Juricic, then it is possible through that descent and also across that flat toward the end that he could definitely bridge back across to that. As you pointed out around heart rates, and by the way, I love controversial calls. I think, we get to do that sitting in this chair, don't we? It's a little bit easier than when we're on the bike, Kieran. The heart rate is a really interesting measure because for once we are thrown all of this enormous amount of data. And we don't get this in real life. We don't get this when we're watching the Tour de France broadcast. We don't know any of this rich data that we are able to access here, and we can't really look at their heart rate and kind of guess what may be going on and how they may be feeling toward that. We also don't really know what their maximum heart rates are or anything like that. Their powers are certainly potentially a much more accurate measure. Now, in saying that, you can't ever look at somebody with a heart rate over about 175 and say that they're just cruising and completely comfortable. We all know what it feels like to have a heart rate that high. It's where you can't talk. You're exerting yourself to that degree that you are definitely putting some solid efforts in. So Ben Hill, he's really taking control here, Kieran. He's just riding his own pace. Juricic, as they're heading toward the top, is starting to put a bit more. But this just shows Hill's experience that he's kind of not biting. He's maintaining his power consistency, and they will go over the top together here.
Yeah, no, that's a very well-measured climb by Ben, that's for sure. As we're getting in the picture there, Ange and her climb, she just got over the Epic KOM. She's rounding her way across to Radio KOM as we speak, and boy, what a climb from her. That looks like it didn't hurt too much. As much as it would have hurt an awful lot, it didn't hurt as much as it maybe could have if she did an all-out 20-minute test on it. But no, she's recovered quite well there. Heart rate dropping quite quickly. I noticed on the climb we saw her sitting around 160, dropping down below 150 now. She's riding conservative. She's got the gap now. She just doesn't want to lose that gap. She maybe wants to just slowly build on it over time. But we're seeing back across there at the men, Ben now leading as we did the loop around, and we've started the descent down Epic KOM, down Radio Tower, entering the tuck as well. I know that everyone loves talking about the tuck, the super tuck, banned in real life, illegal in Zwift, that's for sure. But what it does, once you get above a gradient above 6% and you're above 56 kph, you can enter what we call the super tuck, and that makes you so much quicker. And that's what we're seeing here. Ben pulling away from Isaac, and Isaac just can't get on terms. He's doing his best. He's surging. He's trying to get back on terms, then enter that super tuck again, then get back in, out, And all of that, what it's doing is giving Ben the advantage when it comes down to a sprint. He's burning more and more bickies. But we see Ben timing that perfectly. He's done this before, that's for sure. Timing it absolutely perfectly back onto the slight kick up as we ride our way back down to the next part of the descent there.
You pointed out earlier in terms of Ben Hill's climbing comfort and how well he timed it, and whether he would be able to just keep going with that, or whether he would ride with Juricic, and potentially how much quicker it is down the hill. Ben Hill, this is a masterclass from a tactical point of view. He has done such a good job. And Kieran, you said that when you're climbing, you don't like the stop-start nature. For you, you kind of are a diesel and you prefer that long climb. What I'll say to that is these descents, they kill me. You think super good chance to have a recovery, but if I go into the super tuck and I stop pedaling for a couple of minutes, when I start pedaling again, it feels like somebody's filled my legs with lead. So how do you feel going down these descents if you are kind of more of a diesel on the way up?
I'd have to agree with you there, Kate. I'll make a controversial call, but I hate the super tuck. I don't want to freewheel. I mean, sure, we have to in real life, right? When we've crested a big climb, a big mountain, wherever you are in the world, and you've done the part and you're going into a hairpin, whatever it is, you do need to freewheel a little bit. But you don't typically just freewheel for 20 minutes down a climb, do you, in real life? And that's what I like. And whereas the one we're looking at here, the Epic KOM's descent features quite a lot of little steep kickers. And you go from doing the super tuck, obviously 0 watts into it, to having to ramp up suddenly into the orange numbers. Ben doing 600 watts, that's from a nothing. That's from a standstill, straight into a 600 watt effort. I don't care who you are. I don't think you like that. I don't think there's a single rider out there that their legs are suited to that kind of ability. But Ben's a rider that's mastered that, I would say. He's a rider that doesn't mind that at all. He's probably the opposite to you and I, Katie. He likes it, and he might be the reason. And I'm not too proud to admit it, but I've been dropped by Ben down a descent before. He's a rider that really knows how to use a descent to his advantage, and that's part of the fun of Zwift, right? Every opportunity, every bit of the road is a chance to actually get up the road. If you know the platform, if you know the ins and outs and how to use it, you maybe have the right power up at the right time, or you just know the terrain better than somebody else. Ben obviously knew that descent incredibly well. He knew how to use it to his advantage, and he's already built out a 17-second gap, 16-second gap over Isaac there chasing.
All right, we're going to go back to Juricic here and see how he's going. He's about 15 seconds down. He's not in the super tuck despite his speed. Perhaps he's enjoying just pedaling and keeping those legs ticking over exactly as we were just talking about. Perhaps, in fact, he just hasn't gotten into his downhill rhythm. His heart rate has settled. There he goes into that super tuck. I'm wondering if the 16 behind the OMG is actually his age. If it is, then what a tremendous young Zwifting talent we are seeing here, chasing Ben Hill down the climb. The gap, 14 seconds. Tony Doherty, he's only a couple of seconds behind Juricic. Now, we did discuss this, didn't we, that perhaps Doherty would be able to come back on this descent. I guess the question is, once Doherty rejoins Juricic, can they work together to get back to Ben Hill? Will they be able to combine that? Doherty's certainly not there yet. He's still got a little bit to go to be able to chase, but that gap has come back down. I think I said 45 seconds. I hoped that if he only had 45 at the top, I thought he might be able to get back on. He's certainly making his way back to that.
Yeah, the race isn't over for Tony here, that's for sure. I think he's got the opportunity. It's in front of him. I don't know much about the rider. I don't know if he's much of a time trial or anything like that, but Aussies tend to do not half bad in the time trial, and he is chasing another Aussie, so maybe not so great ahead of him. But I don't know too much about Isaac, that's for sure, and he is obviously quite a young rider, one of our junior riders, so he maybe doesn't like too long of an extended effort on the flat, that's for sure. But I think what's going to happen, what we're going to see is a real decision being made once we hit the flat. I think Ben, obviously, he's got the cards in front. He knows what he needs to do. He needs to keep just on that power, keep consistent, right at that a power that he knows that he can hold till the finish. We've got about 10K left or so once we hit the flat here, a bit less even once we hit the flat. But I think, yeah, it's really going to come down to who has the best legs once we hit the flat. Who has ridden this as conservative as they can, who's left enough just left in the bank to put it on the line. And I think what we're really going to see is some really impressive numbers. And I think Ben's going to have to step it up, probably sit, I'd expect around 400 watts, somewhere around that range to keep Isaac at bay. But he has the cards to play. He can watch what Isaac's doing. He can measure his effort against that rider behind him. And same as Tony back there in third place, Tony can look ahead and see what Isaac's doing and base his effort against him. So Isaac's unfortunately found himself in the Aussie sandwich and how he can play it. But the big winner out of all of this, is Tony. Tony is the one who has the points, so he's the one that's winning out of everything that we're seeing right now. But take a look there at where we're at on the course profile. We're at that 29-30K mark, which means we've just reached a flat, and we stay flat all the way up to that 34K mark until we get back into Titans Grove. And at that point is when things start to lift uphill, lift back downhill, the roller coaster that is Titans Grove. They're going to have to adjust their power accordingly on each part. A rider like Ben's going to love that. I don't know how Isaac's going to find it just yet. This is my first time coming across him, but he's looked like he's handled it so far so well. But we'll have to wait and see. All the way into that KOM, which we already did see that very first time through. That was in the first 9Ks. We took our way up that first reverse KOM, and that's where we're going to be finishing today, up that KOM. But now what we're watching here is a very well-measured effort from Ben. Unfortunately, it looks like he's having a couple HR issues. I did notice it was working fine originally. So Ben, I believe you. Your effort's real today. I know you very well. But unfortunately, it looks like he's just stuttering in and out. But I think Isaac, I think it's day done for the win here. I mean, the wise person, they would wait for Tony. I think that's the move I'd personally be doing. But we're taking a look back here at a few of our chasing riders. We got Mears from the Sparrows racing team trying to get back to Williams ahead and Lee in front of him. But the rider there, Stevenson, up in front of all these riders, he actually raced yesterday as well. So he's got some points. So we're seeing a battle here between all of our contention to get that last place in the podium. Trent Stevenson finished third yesterday. So he's obviously got a bit of power to flex on the flat here. And he's got a rider with him from Japan by the looks of it. One of the EMU riders of the esports team out of Japan. Maku was his name there. But that might suit him quite well. It's a minute to Tony. I'm not saying it's doable, but, he is the rider that could pose the biggest threat to Tony in his position at the top of the leaderboard there. He obviously, third yesterday is 38 points for him, and Tony's sitting on 40 points now. That's what we're going to see, take place here. But Tony has a big carrot ahead of him. He's got Isaac Juricic right in front of him. Seems like Isaac's having a really tough time staying on top of the gear. That's what I'm noticing from his power. It keeps fluctuating higher than low, higher than low. That's a rider struggling to be comfortable in the saddle. And Tony obviously is a rider that knows his ability. That's what I'm seeing, at least from him in his power profile right now. He's just staying smooth, 340, 350, 360 watts. He's in the rhythm right now, and that time is just coming down every single pedal stroke. He's down from 15 to 14, now down to 13. I think we can say, yep, there's 12. He's got the carrot right in front of him, and he's stretching the advantage behind and catching the right in front. So what we're seeing right now, Tony is solidifying that gold place, that's for sure. This might be a silver medal for him at the end of this, which would be a lovely 39 points to add to his win yesterday.
It certainly is. He's looking really controlled and composed, isn't he? Ben Hill, I feel like we could talk about his class till the cows come home. I would really love to see Mark O'Brien out here. That is like a direct shout out to him to get on his bike and come and join this fun. Let's talk about Zwift Academy for a second, Kieran, because the Aussies have done exceptionally well in heading toward the final. So we've got 3 Aussies that will be going to Spain to fight for that Alpecin Phoenix contract. What are the Aussies doing right? We are just year in, year out, absolutely representing, aren't we?
I do have one of my favourite stats, at least for the men that I know. There's only ever been one actual non-Aussie winner in the ZA finals. Obviously, last year Jay prolifically took that out after a very nice season on Zwift and IRL. Not to boot that off, obviously he took a podium at Herald Sun Tour at the continental level down here, down under, but. He also then went on to win the NRS series on Zwift and then on to take out Zwift Academy in the finals and had an awesome season with Alpes and Phoenix. And funnily enough, we've got two riders from Jay's old team in the final. That's Sam Hill, Ben's brother that we got out in front there, and Cooper Sayers from down in Adelaide. So that's, obviously that team, Narrow, they're doing something right. They race regularly on Zwift. They've got riders that translate directly to the World Tour through the meeting as Zwift Academy. So they take it seriously. And I do know from Sam, one of our finalists, his power profile is something that I scarcely can believe. He has posted 472 as his FTP. Now, that's Philip Garner numbers. So that's a rider that I imagine Apis and Phoenix are awfully curious to get a close look at. I know that their main rider, Matthew Vanderpool, won as Zwift's poster childs. His own power as well. That's around 480, 490 as his FTP. So he's not too far off Matthew Vanderpool numbers in a build that might be slightly lighter. I don't know. We've got an interesting rider on our hand. And I've had the joys or unjoys of having to race against Sam over the years. And
the unjoys.
Definitely, I would say the unjoys. But he's a rider that has been awesome to watch progress. In the junior days when I used to race against Sam, he was a rider that was in the pack. I wouldn't say I would have thought he would kick onto the level he's at right now, but he's said that to all the naysayers. You know what? It is about perseverance. This sport rewards someone who just keeps going at it, keeps putting in the work, and it rewards that rider. And that's what we've seen in Sam. Credit to him. He's been around as long as his brother has, and anyone in Australian cycling knows the Hill name. And Sam's been chipping at it, and he's now getting his chance.
So let's also acknowledge that the Aero, what an incredible job Aero has done in developing esports athletes in Australia. I cannot be more complimentary of what Tully Lister has done with that mob there, not only in just the pure talent that they have in the team, but the way that they've developed the riders and strategically really built that community across all grades. Ben Hill riding into Titans Grove now. This is where he knows he's almost home. He can sniff the finish here. So the 39 kilometre mark on that ticker is where we will see that finish line. So for him, he's able to just get into a comfortable rhythm. You'll note, though, his power has not backed off, even though arguably he could probably back off the gas just a little bit. He's keeping it at a very nice, workable pace. The heart rate is in a zone. Let's not say that he'd be able to have a fantastic conversation with Beck or the bub right at the moment. That's probably not going on, but he does look like he can at least maintain this pace through. Juricic, I have delved into that, and Kieran, he is 16 years of age. Unbelievable talent. Look at that. That is absolutely sensational. So probably not surprising to see him struggle a little bit in the second half of the race when he is a younger rider. And Ben Hill is so much more experienced and able to really measure that effort. Titans Grove, Kieran, it can be a little bit nasty. These rollers can really hurt and burn the legs, can't they? Because you really have to just keep putting the power down. And if when it goes slightly downhill, you just back off for even a second, it makes that next little pinch a real grunt.
Yeah, Titans Grove was the expansion about 3 years ago from memory. I don't want to get that wrong by my employers, but it was one of the funnest ones I think that we've added, and it's made some very interesting race courses and additions on out here on Zwift. And as you know, it's just never flat. There's not a flat road in here. And for all the listeners out there, the Titans Grove actually is mirrored off the Sands and Sequoias over in California, which is where we're based. That's where Zwift HQ is. We're a very proud Cali company based in Long Beach, actually. So a lot of what you see in Watopia is actually based off Cali areas and roads. And that's what Epic KOM actually is. It's a climb in Cali that the the main creators of Zwift Road back in the day, and they loved it that much. They popped it in game and have continued to expand on that theme. And that's why we see a lot of the redwoods around us. And we'll see one of the bears as well drop out of the trees. There's lots of fireflies, all that kind of stuff. The smoky cabins, everything you'd see in the sequoias out there in California. Quite sad to see recent
really
news
cool.
that quite a few of them were up in flames, unfortunately, but it sounds like a few made it through, and we'll see that come back to real life. But no matter what, we've always got the ones in Zwift, that's for sure.
Yes, and in fact, there are a few little slothies getting around too. I love the sloths in Zwift. I love the dinosaurs as well. It's certainly a lot to keep everybody a little bit entertained. I want to talk a little bit more about Zwift Academy, Kieran, because I just absolutely love the concept of it and having the Aussies really at the forefront. These kind of races really pave the way. I think a couple of years ago, there was a bit of a disconnect perhaps about the relevance of Zwift in the greater cycling ecosystem, but it feels like things are shifting a little bit, and Zwift is becoming the area where a lot of talent is developed, and they're getting a lot of racing. And if we even look at Juricic, at 16, I expect to see him probably in the hunt in the Zwift Academy in the years to come. In real life, he would not have the same opportunity to do all of this racing and development.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Sam, his own credit, I mean, a rider we've already spoken about, but Sam credited Zwift, in the lockdown period. He was actually a rider that wasn't really an adapter of the platform, unlike his brother. Ben was really the hill that loved Zwift, and Sam was kind of the one that loved taking segments on Strava. That was kind of the difference between the two. And Sam, obviously, has been one of the NRS races, and over the last 2 years, there was no NRS racing. So he set sights on learning Zwift. That's where the racing was now, and credit to him, that's paid off, because now he has a chance of winning an IRL contract out of it. But you're not wrong on Isaac's front. His age, I expect in 2 years' time, we're going to see him being one of these finalists, maybe. These power out here being his age and everything, I think it's quite incredible. We're going to see him continue to develop, and he's using Zwift, obviously, to do so. So he's learning the platform more and more to ply his trade. But no, we're seeing Ben here doing a masterclass. This is really class ride. You touched on it earlier, Kate, that he didn't ease off. He could have rode to the ride behind him. He's got 43 seconds at the end of the day. He could just match the watts that Isaac's doing and Tony as well. But he instead just stuck to what he knew. He wants to get a good workout in today, and he's really forcing the point home as he starts that final KOM. And that's what that green line was across the road. That was the signifier that we're on the KOM now.
So he is coming into the final KOM. He will then come into the finish, not too far away. Ben Hill looks like he will comfortably take this away. And Kieran, do you think perhaps he's got an eye on a berth at the upcoming Esports World Championships that are on Zwift there in February 2022? But it is hot time for the Aussie selectors to start really watching everything that's going on in the Zwift world. And maybe Ben's got a bit of a highlighter over that one.
Yeah, I think obviously Ben was a rider that got to represent Australia last year, and I would, I'm not going to commentate curse anybody right now, but I would love to see Ben get that chance to line up one more time. He's a rider that has been riding very, very well throughout the whole year on Zwift in particular. There's been no racing for these Aussies that are local except for Zwift, so that's going to be interesting for the selectors to have to choose riders that way. Obviously, there's plenty of professionals who do ride on Zwift on the off-season and then jump back into obviously racing for their real World Tour teams. So no, I think he'd be a rider we expect to see. But yeah, Ben definitely easily has taken that one out today as we watch Isaac continue to battle with Tony behind, and it looks like a battle he's going to win. He's timed it quite well, I would say. He knew Ben was a step too far for him today, and he wanted to secure second, and he's done a very good job of that. That's displaying wiseness beyond your years right there. That's a wealth of top brain talent. And Tony, he's done his best. He's put his legs to work today. He tried his very best to get second, but at the end of the day, all he had to do was defend. He's the rider with the lead. He's got the 40 points from yesterday from winning that time trial. And today he's securing further points over Stevenson behind him. And Stevenson is actually the rider directly behind him currently, or he's with a rider from Japan. But, he's got one more point over Stevenson. Stevenson finished third yesterday, so that's yet more points in front of him. And that's going to be a very, very nice little bag for him to take to that final stage. But we're taking a look at Stevenson there, third place from the time trial yesterday. He's gonna be the real big threat to Tony tomorrow. But let's take a look back at the women now.
We'll stay with these guys just for a few more minutes, and then we will go to the women, as you say, Kieran. And really good point talking about those points, because it's very easy to watch this in isolation and forget that this is a tour. It's a 3-stage tour. And you do not have to, as we know with Ben Hill, you do not have to ride every stage to be able to still compete, because, there's real life stuff going on as well that we have to balance, and not everyone can make all 3 stages. But Tony Doherty and Trent Stevenson, they are the two that have been very consistent at the front end of this. So Echuka Moama represent, but INC, that is the Zwift team that he does race for. So these guys are definitely, from a points perspective, right up the top of that table, and we'll have to see how it shakes out with all of the other riders who've been there for a couple of days. But this is an interesting one, because Marku is actually on the move. Stevenson having to respond, both of them dipping into the orange. They're not too far at all from the finish, but that was a fairly early move from Marku. Stevenson has countered, and I think that this is going to be a bit of a battle to the finish, but Stevenson still out of the seats, still putting out those massive numbers. We can see in the orange that when they are in the orange, they are really still motoring along, and he will take out these points ahead of Marku. So he will just be behind Doherty from a points perspective. And Kieran, this 3rd stage is going to be very important.
Yeah, very important from Stevenson there, taking that out. That was very wise not easy to do, but very wise to shut that down and make sure he keeps the throttle close to Tony. The race isn't done now. We're into the final for those pair. But we're taking a look at here at Ange, who is ridden a very well-measured race. She's riding within herself once again. She's at 140 BPM for her. We're seeing her up at 160, so we know now that 140 probably is it's a hurting spot, that's for sure, but it's probably not too bad for her. It's where she probably likes to be up. She's lended herself that advantage by forcing the point home so early that she now gets to ride to her pace. But she's on her way now to Titans Grove. She's going to take that right-hander up ahead very soon. But we've got Hammer behind, sitting there at 3 minutes. And she herself looks like but in the underwater portion here. She's a little ways off, but she's riding her own race. Every rider out here is riding their own race towards the finish to, keep their points tally by the end of it. I think I don't think we're seeing any change overall here. We had literally this order yesterday. We had Ange taking out the win with Hammer second, and then it was Megan in third. And that's what we're going to see again today. So time trials, they tend to be a good measure of who and where we're at, and it proved true in this one today. Maybe not so much for the men. Of course, we didn't have the 2 riders that won and got second place starting out, but in the women, definitely true. We see there on the screen, we got Ange in first, Hammer in second, Megan down there in third. Unfortunately, we didn't have Birdie Num Num or Jan Arnold starting today to see how that could have shaken things up.
Hammer has averaged just shy of 200 watts for this hour, but her normalized power is just over the 200 watt mark. So that is a fairly consistent effort from her. In fact, her 20-minute power profile is around 4.3 watts per kg, and today for an hour and 10 minutes, give or take, is how long she'll be out there. It'll be up around that 200 mark. So a very solid effort from Hammer, and I'm actually really impressed with a small field how well they have managed to race and how hard they have in fact pushed, and good on them. So looking back at Megan Gammy now, she has also, in terms of Normalised power averaged around the 200 watt mark for over that hour. So that is a really solid effort from her. She's looking to be out on course for about an hour and 11 minutes. So definitely one of the longer days in terms of Zwift racing, Kieran.
Yeah, no, this course isn't definitely that short and sharp stuff that we see across in Zero in comparison to this. This is definitely a longer day on the pedals. But no, what we're seeing, it was interesting to note those power profiles between Ange and Hammer. But we've got what's interesting to note there. I see they're sitting on average wise very similar watts per kilogram, and what that says is obviously they've raced this quite measured, Ange knew what she was doing. She put in the effort where she had to and rode easy where she needed to. And that's that experience factor at the end of the day. Hammer maybe potentially doesn't ride on Zwift too much, and she's just ridden quite consistent, I would say, by the looks of her power at least. She's ridden quite consistent. An average of 198 to a normalizer 204 tells me you're pretty much just on the pedals the whole day. Which that obviously doesn't necessarily work on a course like this. And that's what we've seen between Ange and Hammer there, a 3-minute 13 difference, despite the fact that they were riding very similar power and very similar averages in watts per kilogram. It goes down to, it is all about where you put in the power. But we're with Ange to the finish now. She's similar to Ben, isn't laying off the pedals just because she has a huge advantage over the rider behind. She's riding through to the end. She wants to show what she has. She wants to keep the class on. She knows that, there's an esport world championship on the line sometime pretty soon, as you noted, in Feb 22nd. Maybe she wants to say to the selectors, hey, look at me. Why not? I think, Australia is very fortunate to have so many talented esport riders out here. But, we're seeing maybe one that wants that green and gold jersey. It would be, for a lot of riders, the interesting thing about esport worlds is maybe they're a rider who mightn't have gotten to go to the real life world championship. They wouldn't have gotten to ever have gotten that green and gold. And I can tell you from my real life racing, that moment when you first get that green and gold jersey, it means so much. Doesn't matter how you've earned it, whether it's for any form of the sport, BMX, mountain biking, time trial, esports now, it's so big when that turns up. And for these riders, that's what they're out here racing for today. There's obviously the glory of getting to take this out for your team or your club or your own self, the personal glory, but there's also that little eye to the fact that, there is that world championship coming up, and Australia have a tough job ahead of them. We've got a lot of talented riders down here. We're very fortunate, and I'm very, very keen and excited to see who we pull together, because last year we got so close in the women. Sarah Gigante, obviously silver medalist for us. Ashley, very class ride from her. That women's race, I tell you, it was so exciting. And those images of that final of Sarah and Ash together just going hammer and tong at each other, and obviously Ash just being the stronger rider on that day, it's going to be exciting to see that repeated over on New York's course. I think it's going to be very fun. It's going to be very exciting. And I know that we've got some very strong women, very strong men as well, that are going to give us a very good chance once again to go for the rainbow stripes. And I'd love to see the rainbow stripes on an Aussie Zwifter.
I would too. I would absolutely love to see it. They are racing, as you mentioned, through New York around the Knickerbocker course. It is a sensational course for an Esports World Championships. I think Zwift has absolutely nailed that one. So that will be fairly spectacular. And you hit the nail on the head. I was looking at Hammer and nearly tripped over my words there, Kieran, thanks to your absolutely winning comment before. And the selectors do have a tough job ahead of them because we do have so much talent. It is not just about the pros who might strap their bike onto the Zwift, but we have some incredible talent coming through the community leagues. And in fact, if you look at Premier League, you might think that that's where you find the real peak of talent in Zwift. But I can tell you that some of the performances down at the community level have been absolutely outstanding and have led to some pretty impressive results across the board in some other races. Ange Mccray, what a day she has had. She's coming up to this last climb now. She will finish at that 39 kilometre mark, and she has had a tremendous ride, riding within herself, less than 150. That's always my benchmark for where you can and can't talk. It's rough, I won't deny that, but I reckon if your heart rate's under 150, you should be able to have a little bit of a yarn. I'm not sure that Ange is, making to-do lists for the rest of her day, but she's done a tremendous job. And I'll also say that something I really love about her racing, Kieran, is that because she races quite a lot on this platform, she does a really good job of racing in a smart but measured way, because she does have another stage tomorrow. She will be doing some other racing this week. She's riding at a level that is a solid effort that will get her the win, but she's also not sitting at 175 beats per minute up to the very end and just absolutely needlessly flogging herself. So it's really good to see in action where they are absolutely thinking about all of the other stages that are yet to come.
Yeah, they're riding at 170 BPM and just flogging yourself all day. I think that's called the Kieran Lewis measure of racing on Zwift. Unfortunately, no other way. But no, Ange has really, again, this has just been a class ride from her. She showed that she knows the platform today, and that's how she's pulled this off. You don't ride a very similar power to the rider chasing you and yet win by 3 minutes 30 without knowing how to race on the platform. That's what that's told me. Ange is someone who gets Zwift, they get Zwift racing, and they know when to apply the power. And that's how she's done it today. And boy, what a classy win. But it isn't all done just yet. It is bike racing at the end of the day. We might see some surprises tomorrow if something goes wrong. Maybe Ange might have the virtual flat tire. I don't want to put the commentator's curse on her there, but you never know. The riders still need to turn up tomorrow. They need to still put the pedals in. It's like that stage to Paris, on the tour. It's not over until you actually hit the Champs-Élysées. That's we've got to ride through to the finish. But everything is looking that it's going to be Ange's way for this one. It's going to be a very nice win, and what a tour to take out as well for her.
Well, you've got a little bit of sass about your commentary there, Kieran. I am glad that the commentator's curse didn't in fact play out. So I'm going to leave it to you, because for me, I absolutely jinxed myself and every rider I talked about earlier in the week. But for you, certainly with Ange and Ben Hill, it massively paid off. Now, if you want to take a look at the results, you can head over to Zwift Power and comprehensively go through all of that, delve into all of that data, become a little bit of a data nerd. Our producer, Anna Russell, is a very big fan of whiteboards. So if you want to get yourself a big whiteboard and start writing some notes, you can do that. Kieran, tomorrow we are heading to Richmond. They're doing 2 laps around there. That's a pretty spicy course.
Yeah, Richmond is one of those things that the course profile is a lot easier than it really is. There's some rollers right at the finish there. 2 laps over there on Richmond. It's not an easy course to do, that's for sure. And I'm going to throw out the call early. I expect the same result. I expect Ben and Ange to really dominate. But I don't want to have a bad message from Ben afterwards.
Well, you know what I like to call one of those profiles, Kieran? I like to call it an Italian profile, where on paper it actually looks quite palatable, but you get out there and start cursing under your breath. Well, thank you to everybody for joining us. Riders, you did an excellent job. We will see you at the same time tomorrow for that stage 3 around Richmond. And as Kieran said, there will be a little bit of action. There's some cobbles, there's some hills, there's kind of everything you need. It is too early in the morning for beers, so don't bring those if you're going to join in and have a watch. But we will see you tomorrow.